So hi, Father John-Allen.
Good morning to you.
How are you
Welcome
today?
to Ladysmith.
Thank you very much. Where were you born, Father John-Allen?
I was born in Johannesburg.
And did you grow up in Johannesburg?
Lived all my life in Johannesburg until I joined the fires and then saw the world.
Okay. And then in your matric years, what dreams and desires did you have for your life at that stage?
Matric, I had changed my mind. At an earlier age, at around about 7, I had a relationship with Jesus, which was actually very close, and I promised, I'm going to be your servant. Matric, that changed, and I said, hang on a minute, that really means things like poverty and obedience, and no, this is not for me. Changed my mind, sorry Lord. I want the other things, I want the good things in life. I want money, prestige, and all the things that make life worth living. So that's exactly what I went out to do. Then studied accountancy, CIS, never practiced, went straight into business, and the doors just seemed to open for me in business, and it just grew from 1 to 3 and 3 to more, and so it kept growing until eventually there were about 20 companies in the group. The main company had about 600 employees, had everything that a person could desire, all the things that are supposed to give you peace, joy and security, and those were the 3 things which I couldn't find. Yes, I had the wealth and I had the esteem, but that esteem I found was only skin deep. When I had the experience through the member of the Third Order of experiencing this call back to my promise, and I went to the auditors, the attorneys, and told them, I think I'm actually going to do this now. I'm going to change direction. And when I came in, that was all, you're wonderful, the businessman. Hello, Mr. Green, how are you? And after I told them that, I was stopping, closing down the businesses, giving everything away, and I was going to join the Franciscans, I had lost all worth in their eyes. So leaving, it was a peremptory, shaking a person's hand was not even part of it. So that was a very first lesson in changed priorities. I then joined the Third Order, thanks to Daisy Rokusht. I made the comment one day that you Franciscans, you really are out of touch with the modern world. Just look at what you're wearing, coming from the medieval period. So she sort of tempted me a little bit. She said, how much do you know about St. Francis? The 2 of us were working together for the Jesuits, the Sacred Heart Messenger. I said, well, I know ecology, speaking to the birds, etc. So she said, well, I just read a little book about his life and that. And it was very clever. She gave me a book written by a Jesuit on St. Francis. And I was very intrigued with the life, and I said, well, give me something more to read. And here she came out with this big, thick, red omnibus of sources. And the following year, she invited me to the Laverna. Sorry about that.
You're a modern Franciscan. With modern technology.
Techno monk, as they say. We have an annual get-together for the 3 orders and the various groups that work together at Laverna. And I saw something there that I hadn't seen before in my dealings with other religious orders. I actually saw love and care for each other, and I hadn't experienced this before. It was something that touched my heart. I then started praying about it. I went into the omnibus of sources, I then had this calling to just go away and be alone. So I went up into a hermitage, a private hermitage in the mountains between Johannesburg and Vereeniging, up in the mountains there just beyond Orange Farm. And I stayed there for 2 years, discerning what was the Lord saying to me, what was I being called to do. At the end of 2 years, I felt the Lord was calling me to go out and do some work. And there was this call to go, sell what you have, give to the poor, come follow me. So I first did that, and then went and knocked on the Franciscans' door and said, now, I'm poor, now what are you going to do with me? You shouldn't have done that. That's not the way to do it. I said, but the omnibus of sources says that's how you do it.
Can I interrupt you there, please? As far as I know, in my conversations with you in the past, there were 2 very important moments in your life which I think helped your discernment and brought you to knocking on the Franciscans' door. Would you mind telling us a little bit about those 2 precise moments?
Okay. Well, the one happened when I was just over 40, and at that point in the business sphere I was at the top of my field, you could call it. And then I got cancer, and it was very serious. And I was in hospital at Kensington, at the sanatorium there, and the one afternoon, it's very clear in my memory exactly what happened. There was a bit of sky I could see from my bed and some trees, and I could hear the birds, and it was like it's an inner voice or prompting saying to me, come and I'll lead you back to my son. To me, this was Our Lady talking to me. There was no question about it. So that after 6 months, this calling was so strong, when I was able to walk again and got permission to travel, I went on pilgrimages. Started off in Poland, Jasna Góra, went through Austria, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Lourdes, Fatima, La Boraine, all the Marian shrines, seeking an answer to where am I going, who am I, where am I going, what's the Lord trying to say to me. At Fatima, I had an incredible experience of healing, of just being lost in time. At the start, there was this, what I would now refer to as our time and space touching the transcendent, where you were lost in the transcendence and you just have this incredible feeling of peace and of joy coming to you. The people that were with me were too scared to touch me. I was kneeling down there for about an hour, and they just left me. And when I got up there, I knew I'd received a healing. So that was the one occurrence. The other occurrence was also at Laverna during a retreat, when the first evening I opened my Bible, and I opened at the reading, go sell what you have, give to the poor, come follow me. Second time the same thing. Third time happened again. While I was thinking about St. Francis, I was also saying, no, there's something wrong with this book. It's obviously damaged, its spine is twisted or something, and okay, let me just take somebody else's Bible and open it. And it opened at exactly the same place. So after that I said, okay, Lord, I'm not going to fight you anymore, this is what you want. It was an interesting experience. Obviously people, business associates, family, thought I'd had a nervous breakdown. Overwork, he'll get back to normal. Of course that never happened. And so the process of getting rid of everything. Difficult at first. The first little while, you felt, no, it was this grandparent stuff, mom stuff, dad stuff. And then it started being like a healing process, freeing process, a joyful process almost of all these things which had been holding you, getting rid of it, being free of it. It took time to do this because there were many companies and commitments and things that I had to affect. The main holding company I closed down, but other companies I sold off and got rid of the assets. So this took a number of years to effect before I could go and effectively knock on the door of the Franciscans.
And you say their response to you was not quite what you expected after reading the omnibus. Exactly how did they respond when you arrived?
A bit incredulous, So I said, well, okay, just allow me to work here. I'll come and I wanted to fix the outside grotto, and the chapel looked in a bit of need of some repairs. So I said, let me do that, And I said, normally only people come for a weekend. I said, well, I'm here free. Allow me to do this work. Wonderful experience. Not having really any responsibilities, working, prayer, just feeling free and being with God. That was a 6-month experience. Then I said, well, now do you want to apply? So I did the application and went off to the postulancy, which didn't last very long. After that, it was off to the novitiate. I spent 2 years, 1 year fixing up the place and getting it ready for the novitiate, and the following year the actual novitiate. Then did a year at the Crowd doing philosophy before I was sent off to Canterbury in England to do a year's Franciscan studies, which was incredible. It was studying all the works of Francis, the philosophy of the different Franciscan saints, and then with these 29 people, all from different countries, studying together for the year and then going off to Assisi at the end of the year. A wonderful experience of everything coming alive. Suddenly the Fonte Colombo took on a new meaning. All the stories of Francis.
So you say all these experiences started coming alive for you?
Yes, it was almost what you would refer to as a mystical experience. Feeling the reality of the other person, feeling the reality of Francis at Fonte Colombo, feeling his pain as he had his eyes cauterized, feeling his joy in the different places. Also feeling the joy of St. Clare. For Clare, the experience was one mainly of joy, of peace, of great contentment. Francis, a bit of an enigma. There was joy, but there was also uncertainty. And, so I could associate myself with St. Francis and his journey of seeking in something of my own journey, because I believe that he misunderstood when he heard the crucifix speaking to him, "Go rebuild my church." Through his experience, sometimes the rejection of the friars, the rejection of his ideal of living, right at the end of his life when he is now, he's had his eyes cauterized at Fonte Colombo, he feels the rejection very strongly of the friars in watering down what he has given them as a rule, and suddenly he has this wonderful experience of true joy and peace, and he writes this wonderful canticle. Then paradoxically, in his blindness, suddenly he can see. He sees beauty as God sees it. And I think, it's my own interpretation, that at that point he suddenly realizes that it wasn't the outside church that he was called to rebuild, it was himself. And this journey of beholding the beloved and the beloved looking back at him which was his journey. I think perhaps each one of our journey.
Now, as far as I can remember, you were ordained just over 2 years ago.
That's right.
Can you share with us some of your experience now as ministering as a priest?
I suppose most people would want to hear that it is at the Eucharist that is the high point, but I have found that God's presence in reconciliation, in confession, becomes very real. It's almost as though you are touching between these two worlds. The light becomes slightly thinner. If things aren't as clear as they should be, you feel God's presence. And there's an incredible amount of joy, especially when you have somebody for 40 years hasn't been, and this wonderful letting go, and God's mercy and love and compassion becoming present. This is when I most truly feel to be a priest.
That's wonderful. And so, the question that so many people ask, or can you say that you have found what you are looking for?
There are moments of it. There are moments, especially when you are in the contemplative dimension of our lives, because it's in that contemplative dimension that we touch our ultimate vocation, which is the eternal. We cannot find our peace in things which are passing. So it's only when we return to that contemplative dimension and we almost, you could say, touch God, have this experience of God, there's this feeling of true peace, of joy, and of your security. This is where your security is, not in anything else, not in belonging to anything, but in this union that we're all called to in this journey, this union towards Christ.
So would you say you have found fulfillment in this life that you have chosen?
Certainly, I would say so. The other way, the way of money, power, esteem, is empty. It can offer us nothing. It's an illusion. This is truth, this is reality. You touch on the base of reality. And in that, I think I have found a measure of peace. We can't stay on the mountain, we have to come down and deal with the realities of life and banks and building societies and post office. But then we return, continually we return to that contemplative dimension, to return to our peace. I think as Francis himself did.
Now, as you know, there is generally a shortage of vocations to the religious life and priesthoods in our society today. What would you say to encourage a young man to take up the vocation for the priesthood or religious life?
I would use Jesus' words, come and see. Come and experience. Come for a weekend, come for 6 months. Have a look. And maybe, just maybe, you can find that same peace and joy and that security that I found in it.
Now, you used some very big words like the contemplative dimension and contemplation. Can you please just explain that to me in a simpler language?
Modern day terminology uses meditation and contemplation and in one. But normally meditation is that you'd use scripture or you'd use some holy readings of the saints and you would place yourself into the story, feel it, taste it, become part of it. Let that story speak to you. What is Jesus saying when he speaks to me at the mountain? What's he saying from the fishing boat as I see him out there on the waves? How is this talking to me? This is meditation, making yourself part of the story, listening to the story, applying it to yourself, becoming part of it. Contemplation is letting go of all of our images, all of our stories, even of who I am, trying to become that naked person so that you can touch this transcendent moment. What happens normally is you just disappear in time because you go beyond time. You are touching something that is incredibly beautiful. You're touching love, really, and you come out of it, often not knowing where you've been or what the experience has been, but there was this incredible feeling of peace, of love, of acceptance. So I would say meditation is using our faculties, touch, smell, see, reading, and then our imagination. Contemplation, on the other hand, lets go of all of these things, letting go of my images, who's God, who I am, and just being present to God, allowing Him to do the work.
Now, speaking from your heart, is there anything important that you feel you'd love to say to us?
I think that our problem with vocations today is that we often use rules and regulations instead of going back to the gospel. The promise that we've made is to live the gospel life. We don't need to find our way of life in anything else. The gospel tells us how to live, how to be in relationship. I believe we should return more and more to that gospel, to search for the truth, to search for that relationship with Christ.
Very well put, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, now for the future, do you have any vision in mind or any ideas or anything that you'd like to fulfill still in your life?
I feel that the Franciscan charism is very important at this point in the world's development, that we stand on the threshold between coming to a new consciousness, a new awareness of our oneness, our connectedness with each other and with the world and with the greater cosmos, or moving backwards. And that the Franciscan message, the Franciscan experience is very valid for that. For the ecology today, our unity with the world, in many ways we're like people who've gone insane on board an aircraft, and we're busy tearing out the instruments, tearing out the seats and throwing them overboard because we don't understand the mechanics of what we're doing. So the earth, and as Francis calls it, our Mother Earth, coming to that new understanding of how we fit into a relationship with all of God's creation, to see God in everything, to see God in the blade of grass, in a piece of rock, to see God in our fellow creatures, and especially, of course, to see God in all our brothers and sisters, irrespective of nationality, colour, or where they are.
So you feel that the Franciscan charism still is important and valid for today?
More than that, I would say it's imperative that we go back to the Franciscan charism. If you even look at people who are studying this point in our world's history, like the Budapest think tank, they use terms which are very Franciscan, understanding that the national borders that we've created can no longer stand in this new world, that we have to see a new way of sharing our resources in this world with all the brothers and sisters. And so here you have scientists, musicians, philosophers speaking like Franciscans, and we need to speak to them, to bring them to a greater understanding, a deeper understanding of this transcendent experience.
Can you say a bit more about the Budapest think tank?
The Budapest think tank is a group of people who understand that we are set on this brink, on this knife edge in our world, that we are doing things not rationally, that we are busy destroying our habitat, destroying ourselves. So they've drawn together people from all walks of life to say, how can we now start thinking outside the box? How can we start understanding our relationship anew. How can we move to a new level of consciousness? So as I say, they've pulled in people from all walks of life, scientists, mathematicians, physicists, poets, mathematicians, because mathematics has a language as well. They haven't drawn in too many religious leaders, because sometimes religious people are very caught up in their rules and regulations, and this calls for us to see further, to see beyond, to let go of the things that bind us. So I feel that we as Franciscans, in our contemplative dimension, have a role to play in this Budapest think tank.
Okay. Now, in the questions that I've asked you, is there any question you feel that I should have asked and I did not ask it? Or anything else that you'd like to say which you think we could benefit from hearing?
At this moment I can't think of anything.
Okay, that's no problem.
Perhaps it's because two cameras are staring at me.
Well,
I'm sure I have lots.
I'd just like to thank you for this opportunity, for this interview. I think you've been tremendous, and you've shared you've shared a wealth of beautiful experiences with us. So thank you for the work that you are doing, and
I want to thank you, because I believe what you're doing, going out there and touching young people's lives, is something that is very valuable. Perhaps something I could add, many of the mystics, or modern day mystics, are saying that our world, our people, our species, is currently in the dark night of the soul, as it were. They are searching. And exactly what the Budapest think tank is saying, they're saying in a different way, that we need to find a new way through this, a new way of coming into cooperation with God.
well, thank you very much, Father John-Allen, and I wish you God's richest blessings in your ministry and your work here in Ladysmith. And goodbye and God bless.
Thanks very much, Father Graham. Travel safely.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.